Hey everyone, and welcome to yet another car chat. Today you'll find me driving a Polestar 2. I was actually a little bit apprehensive about renting one of these. Now I've had the Tesla Model 3 and Tesla Model Y, both long range, both dual motor, and they're very performance cars, and for the most part this Polestar 2 is one of the cheapest cars that Hertz actually rents out. And with a range of only about 240 miles, I was thinking maybe perhaps it wouldn't quite suit the needs of my family, whether or not we can make it to the different places that we would go and be able to return on the single charge. But, and this is quite surprising for me, as it may be for you, this is actually a lovely little car. It's quite amazing. The range is still 240 miles or thereabouts, but that's the actual range. This car will do 240 miles to the charge very, very easily. And for the most part, when you actually do set any destination that you want to actually head towards, you don't necessarily need to use it, although it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in some way. You don't necessarily need to use either of those things by attaching your phone via the cable. What Polestar have done is they've integrated Google Maps into the main interface of the cars, and therefore you actually have Google Maps built into the car itself, which is quite amazing, primarily because you can actually set the destination that you want to head towards, and once it does the searching, you choose where you're going like you would do on your phone or any mobile device that uses Google Maps. The additional element is that it gives you how much percentage of battery you will have left when you do arrive, and that's actually using Google Maps as the main calculator for that particular function. Now, one of the key things that I would also say is having Google Maps built into the actual car itself. The other wonderful sorry, I'm just at a major junction, so I'm just sort of making sure that the three-way stop element is safely navigated. So anyway, yeah, so when you have Google Maps integrated into the car, the other element that is phenomenally useful is the fact that the instrument cluster is actually 100% digital, and that digital instrument cluster is actually your Google Maps. So essentially you don't have to keep the central display showing Google Maps. You can actually just look down on your instrument binnacle and see exactly where you need to go, when you need to turn, what sort of lane you need to be in. That's actually all integrated. In fact, let me just show you, everyone, just bear with me 1 second. That's probably going to be slightly, there we go. I'm going somewhere at the moment. It tells me what road I'm on, it tells me which direction I'm heading, it tells me when I need to turn. Everything that Google Maps does, this particular display will show. So essentially I do not need to look at the central display. I can actually just look at the instrument cluster, which is a phenomenal benefit to have, in my opinion, primarily because you're not looking at the central display. Never need to look at it, because I can just navigate looking down as I would do. I can see the speedometer, the speed limit, the charge that I have, whether or not I'm actually regenerative braking. All of that stuff is all just kind of built into the instrument cluster itself. What are other positives about this car? It's built like a regular car, so that's one of the key things that is tremendously surprising, and also in a good way, tremendously surprising and very welcome, that there are buttons in places that I want to operate. For example, if I want to open the boot, so the trunk, for all of my American friends, I can just press a button down here, and there's stalks, there's buttons on the steering wheel. And if I want to turn like the defroster on for the front window or the back window, there's buttons down here which you can't see, but just trust me, they're there. And the other aspect I would say is quite wonderful is this particular model itself, and I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting that I would get the single motor front wheel drive ones, because the single motor rear wheel drive long range Polestar 2s haven't quite made it onto the market in anger as yet, but I'm sure they will. So therefore I figured that Hertz would rent out these particular Polestar 2s with the front wheel drive versions, and I was genuinely and very pleasantly surprised to find out that the one that they gave me is actually the 300 kilowatt motor, 300 kilowatt power dual motor with four-wheel drive, which which makes this car particularly quick because it's about 408 horsepower. So it doesn't have the performance pack as such, but there's a level of irony as I say that, and I'm realizing it as the words are coming out of my mouth, that 408 horsepower isn't the performance version of this particular car. So you kind of get it all the way up to 476 horsepower, and you get, with those, you get these wonderful gold sort of inlays with the seat belts and with the brake calipers, etc. But this one doesn't have that. This one is, for my money, one of the best cars on the market, primarily because it's an absolute sleeper. I love it when a car doesn't necessarily show exactly what it's capable of, and it just looks like a regular sedan or a saloon vehicle. So in the UK we call these saloons, in the US you guys call them sedans, but potato, tomato. For the most part, it's great. This car is genuinely wonderful, and given the option, and this is key, for me, for someone like me who is slightly backwards, in that I'm slightly old, what I mean by that is this particular car has buttons, it feels like a traditional car, there's an instrument cluster, and I can and any old monkey would be able to essentially work the navigation system. I've arrived where I was going. That's what the little diddling sound is. Yeah, it's much more of a simple interface. It's much easier to get used to than, say, the Teslas, primarily because, well, for the Model 3 and the Model Y, you've only got the central sort of infotainment system, which is brilliant, by the way, but it takes some getting used to, primarily because you have to actually navigate through the various elements to be able to get to open the glove compartment, although I couldn't open it because Hertz locked it and put a pin on it from my perspective. But anyway, let's move on from that. The other aspect to... evidently I've arrived. Anyway, so I guess the other little sound would have been I've just turned somewhere where Google Maps didn't want me to turn. But anyway, I'm exactly where I need to be. I've arrived at Walmart. Anyway, I won't mention anything else about being in Walmart, but there you go. Yeah, so the infotainment system in a Tesla is a little bit more complicated for someone like me to get used to, whereas this one is much more like a phone, I would say. You know, if you've used an Android phone, you will actually take to this car like fish to water. So for the money, I would prefer this over the Model 3 if both of these cars were priced the same. But are they priced the same? They are not, primarily because this car is actually $20,000 or thereabouts more expensive than the Model 3 dual motor long range. Now, what does that mean? Well, in order to be able to get into this Polestar, which is a beautiful car, by the way, it's got this, and again, as I mentioned, it's not the bog standard sort of bottom of the range, just a, you know, single axle drive. It's both the axles are driving, well, I sort of see, yeah, actually it is both the axles. There's dual motor, so each motor is driving each axle, so both the axles are being driven as opposed to just a single axle. It's got this wonderful sort of, I guess they call them moon roofs because they don't open, wonderfully put together and everything else. It's all well and good. 408 horsepower. For $20,000 cheaper, I can get a Model 3 dual motor long range, which will do on paper, north of 350 miles. And this one only does 250. So there's a 100-mile on paper difference that this car won't be able to make up, unfortunately. And furthermore, the Model 3s have, or dual motor anyway, around 430, 450 horsepower. Reports of exactly how much horsepower the Teslas have do vary from one publication to another. But anyway, either way, the Tesla's going to have more power than this, and it does feel like it has more power than this. As soon as you floor it in a Tesla, it is poop off a shovel quick. It gets everywhere where you need to go very, very swiftly. The battery capacity, although they say it's about 350 miles, it's not possible to get that, but you can get north of 270 miles, I would say, per charge, and this car gets just around 240 miles to the charge. And to pay $20,000 more, just for the ease of use, for the build quality, and the understatedness, which I like, which is the fact that it looks like a sleeper, it just doesn't justify itself for a family person that is buying a car to get from A to B and to be safe and to take the family here, there and everywhere. So when compared to the Model 3, just on the price alone, it just loses out, unfortunately, in my opinion. So if I was going to actually get one of these, I would love to have this. If they sold it for $46,000 or whatever the Model 3 version, the equivalent competitor would be, for the same price, I would actually end up with a Polestar 2. But unfortunately, Polestar do not sell their vehicles for that sort of price. I've checked online, and even the ones in stock, unfortunately, are around $67,000 to $69,000. And for such a small car, I think that is quite a lot of money. And yes, the technology is wonderful, the drivetrain is wonderful. There are some cons to having an electric-only car, which I'll get into in a little bit. But like for like, penny for penny, if we were to compare the prices and also what you get for what you're paying for, the Tesla is a better bet. Not a conventional bet, but a better bet. What I mean by that is, for example, if you were to go on a very, very long journey and you put autopilot on, the Tesla system for auto drive in some ways is much more gentle, much more put together. So whomever was working, or the teams that were working out the kinks in the software aspect of the sensors, and also what the vehicle controls need to do to be able to automate that process to gently go waft around the highways and either go from lane to lane or keep within the lane, or to be able to sort of gently slow down and speed up with the traffic in front of you. That particular element in a Tesla is second to none. They genuinely have outdone themselves, the engineering teams that actually work within Tesla, to be able to sort of do the auto drive aspect, so the autopilot aspect, justice. The other aspect I would say is both the cars, so the Polestar 2 here, as well as the Tesla Model 3, which are direct competitors of each other, are heavy cars. They're very, very heavy cars. You can't get away from that. But the Tesla, for whatever reason, has better ability to corner, especially if you're driving on less than perfect tarmac. What I mean by that is, if you're taking a corner and there's cracks in the pavement on the road surface itself, and the car, as it's turning, especially at speed, for the Polestar 2 takes a little while longer, that smidge longer, to settle itself back down and give you the confidence to be able to sort of power through the corner, versus the Tesla. Tesla does not get as, and this is a caveat, I'm comparing an electric car to an electric car. I'm not comparing the electric cars to internal combustion engines, internal combustion engine vehicles. The Tesla never gets as unsettled as the Polestar 2, especially in uneven pavement while going around corners. So it definitely has the Polestar 2 beat. But even so, as I said, the quirks of this car, the build quality of this car, the uniqueness, the fact that it looks like a sleeper, for me, is a massive draw. And as I said, if they were selling this for $46,000, $47,000, I would genuinely get this over the Model 3. Now, there's an argument to be made that I actually need a car that's actually Model Y shaped and sized, and therefore there literally is nothing on the market that could meet what the Model Y provides a family with regards to practicality. And for the most part, yes, we will be getting a Model Y still, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, because for the money you literally can't get anywhere near what the Model Y offers. And I'm not entirely sure how or why Tesla are able to make money on the Model Y that they're selling for around $50,000. And again, if you were to go online and search the inventory, you are probably going to be able to buy or find the Model Y to buy that's going to be less than $47,000, maybe $48,000. So you're going to get some money off of those things, but they're phenomenally cheap for what they are, and you get the $7,500 rebate from the government in taxes when you do buy one of those cars, especially within 2023 where I'm recording this video. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same for next year, but time will tell. So from a practicality perspective, this car is great. It's got the frunk and the trunk, or in English, it's got the boot and the fruit. Haha, that's my joke of the video for the day. I'll be here all week. Luckily it's Sunday, so you don't have to wait too long for me to leave. Anyway, for the most part, it is relatively practical in here. It's very low slung to the ground, but the floor of the vehicle isn't as high up as, say, the Model 3, so therefore I'm not feeling like I'm sandwiched like an F1 driver, where I'm practically going to be sort of my legs, phenomenally stretched out in front of me like a go-kart. I do have a little bit more space. I can put the seat up and seat down as I wish. There is that practicality there that maybe, just maybe, nudges in front of the Model 3 because of that extra little bit of space, but we're talking maybe millimeters, maybe centimeters, or partial inches, I guess, if you're watching this in the US, where this car is a little bit more practical than the Model 3 itself. And the build quality, as I said, second to none. The tactile materials are great. I mean, in every single steering wheel where I've touched, in the Model 3 or the Model Y, and any of the Teslas I've driven, there's bubbling of the tactile surfaces, which I really disliked. But you can kind of live with it. It's fine, because what you're getting for the money is mainly the performance and everything else and the infrastructure. But this car in itself is really well pulled together. It's Swedish, right? So it looks really, really nice. The buttons are directly from Volvo, as you would expect. Geely, the parent company of Polestar, also owns Volvo, so there's a lot of sharing of various bits and pieces that suit this car really, really well. In actual fact, this is somewhat a Volvo, but I guess Polestar doesn't like to be called Volvo, so let's not do it, just in case they are watching. And the other element that I wanted to actually mention is, again, this is one of the really quirky, weird things about this car that potentially will annoy someone who actually does own it. And if you're a Polestar 2 driver, please let me know if that is the case with you. You do have various apps on this vehicle, so I'll just sort of pan across and I'll show you. So you've got obviously maps, YouTube, etc. So when you're parked, you can watch YouTube, and when you're charging the car, you can kind of watch YouTube as well, and various other bits and pieces. Now you'll see this little particular app called Audio Wagon. Now I had to go on various forums to be able to sort of figure out what's going on in that. So I've got a lot of music that I listen to. I have a very eclectic musical taste, and I've bought sort of CDs from all over the world, so I listen to a lot of world music that isn't necessarily available with everybody that listens to, say, Spotify. I won't be able to find some of the stuff that I listen to on Spotify or Deezer or many of the other sort of or Amazon Prime Music, whatever it might be, unlimited. A lot of the different music that I listen to may not be found on the streaming services, so therefore I have the CD. I've put the CD on onto an MP3, and that MP3 file goes into a thumb drive. This Polestar 2, for all of the wonders and quirks, and the way that, as I said, the way that they've integrated Google Maps is seamless. It's 99% of the time. There is a caveat there. I'll explain that later. However, for some reason, the car will not read. It will not read thumb drives, even though it's formatted correctly. It has files that have less than 100 songs per file, etc. Blah 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 blah. And some of you may think, oh, this particular Polestar 2 doesn't have the whatever 0.9 version of whatever software that actually enables the vehicle to be able to read thumb drives. It does. I've checked. It's actually way ahead of the particular software version that these cars used to have, where there was a thumb drive issue. So I had to go down to download this Audio Wagon app, which you can do, obviously, because this is particularly good in that it's an Android interface. So you can go onto Google Play and download Audio Wagon, which then enables you to be able to sort of listen to the MP3 thumb drive. Now here's the quirk of it. As I mentioned, this car is between $60,000 to $70,000, maybe a little bit more, depending on how you approach it. Even so, it's not a seamless experience, so I have to go to a third-party app, download that app, and actually be able to listen to MP3 files from a correctly formatted thumb drive. Even then, every single time you start the car, and by start I mean you put it into drive, it will start to read the MP3 and you'll get an error message. Every single time. That will not change. You then clear the error message, and then you'll be able to listen to your music. But once you start to listen to the music, the sound system, this one actually has the Harman Kardon uprated sound system. It's like living in a concert hall. It's wonderfully put together, especially if you kind of are an enthusiast and fit around with the sound settings, of which you have many different types of ways you can kind of change the way that the music is played through the multitude of speakers that actually exist within this car. it's a great place to be. Wonderful sound quality. And the other thing I will say is there is a particular light sort of up, let me just show you, up here. I don't know, you can kind of see it even though it's kind of daylight, where it projects this little light source on the ceiling here, projects up the Polestar logo, which is kind of cool actually. And you've got the frameless mirrors, and again on the outside as well. And one of the key things that was a bit of a shortcoming in a Model 3 Tesla, Model Y Tesla, as well as this particular Polestar 2. The shortcoming I'm talking about is, as soon as it gets dark, obviously the auto lights come on. By the way, this car has wonderful LED matrix front-facing lights. It's great. You can kind of see everything. It's almost clear as day. I'm not entirely sure what's happening with the people that are coming towards me. I'm pretty sure the corneas are bleached. That's a little bit of humor if you're an optometrist. Essentially, like, they're probably going to be seeing stars, but it's got phenomenal clarity going forwards. But all of the mirrors dim. Well, it's just really weird. As soon as it gets dark, the mirrors are dim, which makes it very, very difficult to see what's behind you. And that's whether there is someone behind you with their high beams or not. So they are constantly dimmed when, and they've got the sort of monochromatic technology where it allows the mirrors to actually dim themselves, which is quite cool, but I am not entirely sure they're working or calibrated correctly. I'm sure there is some sort of setting within the infotainment system that one of you watching this video may be able to sort of educate me, and I would love to learn from you how you can sort of change that so that the mirrors are a little bit less sensitive to the light sources that might be behind me at night, so therefore they're not dimming completely, and therefore I can't see what's going on behind me. But for the most part, this is an actual really cool vehicle. It's got relatively great amount of sort of fruit space or frunk space in the front, way better than anything that Kia or Hyundai offers in the Ioniq 5 or the EV6 respective cars, their sister cars actually. And the boot space on this one, again, great. It doesn't have the cavernous area underneath the main boot floor that the Model 3 and the Model Y has, that they're more practical from that perspective. But it does have a hatch, which is actually a little bit better than what you get in the Model Y, but not as spacious as the one you would get from the Model 3, primarily because of, sorry, the other way around. At the back, in a Model Y, you'll get more space, and you've got this cavernous sort of area underneath the main boot floor. But because the Model Y is a hatch as well as this car, they're a little bit more practical. Model Y is a bit more practical than this particular vehicle, I would say, and Model 3 is a little bit less practical, but you still get a little bit more space underneath the main boot floor because you've got this more cavernous area. But this Polestar 2 can hold its own, and as I said, I would love to have this car if it was a little bit cheaper, and if I was in the market for a sedan slash saloon type vehicle. I think this will run rings around the Model 3 dual motor long range, from a perspective of, if I'm a traditional car driver and I'm used to buttons and I'm used to an interface and I've used an Android phone before, I'm going to take to this car like fish to water, as I said. But I'm going to find it a little bit more difficult as a 50, 60, 70-year-old person to integrate myself into what Tesla offers. Now, not to say what Tesla offers isn't good. As I said to you, I will probably be getting a Model Y for my family car in the near future. There is a little bit of a caveat, but I'll talk about that in another video perhaps, as to what my plans are in relation to which car I'm going to be getting. At the moment, the likely contender is a Model Y Tesla, but there are other options out there. It'd be good to sort of talk about it and perhaps get you guys and girls opinions on where you think I need to be, sort of what I need to be thinking about to be able to make my own decision. So any help there would be appreciated. But other than that, I think that's pretty much all I have to say for today. Thank you very much for listening to me. If you got to this, or the end of the video, I really appreciate your time, and any comment that you have to make. I'm mainly on this platform on YouTube to find like-minded people that I can talk about cars with, primarily because none of my friends, well, apart from one, actually likes to talk about cars. So it'd be great to have more of a friend circle, I would say, to be able to sort of discuss things about cars with. And even if we disagree on what's good, what's bad, it's just nice to have an opinion and the opportunity to discuss cars with people. So if you do have something to say, please do put it on in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.